had a few people interested in knowing how I canned my green beans and what my process was. And I wanted to, just as a disclaimer, say I am not a pro. I've not been doing this for years. I mean, I've been canning jelly for maybe 6 or 7 years, which I feel like is a great place to start if you want to start, getting your hands and feet wet and the canning process. This year, since we moved out to the country, I have been feeling more of a desire to do things that seem self-sustainable and trying to do some more things myself. So anyways, I found a method online to can our green beans in a water bath. Like I said, I do not claim to be an expert on this. I probably can offer you very little advice on different things, and it was my first time, so I'm kind of sharing this for anybody else who maybe you've thought about canning, or you've only canned a couple things, but you want to start kind of growing in everything that you're doing. So my mom has a really big garden, and she had a huge, paper ream box full of fresh green beans that still needed snap. They were whole, so they're, fresh from the garden. I have to say that because I'm usually buying canned stuff. And Jackson's walking inside. Go on in, you're fine. So we brought them over to the house yesterday. I left some for Mom, and I took well over half of them. She let me take as much as I wanted, and I wanted to try canning them. So we came back here, and I'm going to try to add some pictures in here, but basically we had one big box full of fresh green beans from the garden. And what you need to do is you snap off the ends, just the little bit of the end that's no good, and then you break the rest of the bean into pieces, like around 1 inch to 1.5 inches, maybe a little smaller if you like them smaller, a little longer if you like them longer. It doesn't matter. So basically you snap the beans, and then I have a good friend who recommended that we soak them overnight. I don't think it does anything to flavor as much as it does texture, and I don't even know what it does. But we soaked ours for a few hours because we intended on canning them last night. So we soaked ours for about 3 hours. We just ran a sink full. I cleaned my sink, ran a sink full of water, and just let them all soak in there for about 3 hours. We didn't add anything to them. We just, every now and then I would swish my hands around in them, get them moved around, because I didn't want the dirt from the garden being canned in there. Any of the benefits, if there is, especially with how hot and dry it's been in our area, that little bit of added moisture in them, I guess, helps so that when you add your brine later, they don't absorb all of that. They're not, the beans aren't thirsty, I guess. So anyway, you soak those, and while you're soaking those, when you're ready to start the canning process, if you've ever used a water bath, it's that, the really good kit that you can get with the big blue pot. Fill it all the way up with just a couple inches of headspace in there, and turn it on high, get it to where it's boiling, because that thing takes a long time to start boiling. And then you can take all those beans and put them in your jars. Before you do any of the brine stuff, you want to put all those beans, you want to drain them out of your sink or wherever you're soaking your beans in, and you put them in the jars, and you leave about 1 inch of headspace. So they're kind of all floating here, but I mean, I don't think I had them past the rim, because up here is the top of the rim, but I didn't go really much past that little lip right there. And I packed them. I would put them in there, and then I'd shake it a little bit to help them move down and settle a little bit, and I'd add a little bit more, and I still had that much extra space by the time you got the brine in. So put your beans in there, and then you're going to, in a separate pot, boil 32 cups of water, 3/4 cup of pickling salt, and I'm going to make a note about that, and 1/2 cup of white vinegar. You're going to bring all that to a boil. Now, my side note on the pickling salt, because we are right at harvest time for a lot of gardens, I went to my local grocery store, my local superstore, and neither of them had pickling salt. They didn't have pickling salt, they didn't have canning salt. So I was in the store panicking and looking online and messaging my canning expert friend, and I was saying, they don't have this, what is there, can I use an alternative? And everything I was saying says you can use any type of salt that doesn't have the anti-caking agents in it, which is impossible to find. Table salt has the anti-caking agents. A lot of kosher salt still has it in there. So I was brave, and I prayed, and I substituted the pickling salt with kosher salt. Now I think what I've read is salt is not an even exchange, so you can't just go from pickling salt to iodized table salt and have the same measurements, because salt it's based on weight, but kosher salt is super close to pickling salt. What that anti-caking agent does, it's not dangerous for you. It's not going to harm you if you ingest it. I've been told that it leaves a good chance of your water in your cans being a little bit cloudy and maybe discoloring the vegetables or the produce that you're canning. And the most thing I've read, or the vegetable that most affects as far as the discoloring is like pickling, when you're doing pickles or cucumbers. But I mean, we used the kosher salt, and it has an anti-caking agent, and that's how clear it came out. I mean, it's still pretty darn clear. Now, if time will tell if it ends up being cloudy later. We'll find out. So anyways, you bring the water, the salt, and the vinegar to a boil. It's those exact measurements, because what you're going to do is once you bring it to a boil, you're going to actually pour it into the cans, or the jars. So you're pouring over that mixture into your jar, and you're going to leave about a ½ inch headspace. So where you left an inch headspace for your beans, you're going to completely submerge your beans with this mixture. Then you're going to dry your rims, and you're going to seal it. I've seen this done, and this is going to make me sound like I am an idiot who has no idea what they're doing. But once you seal them, I've seen people flip them upside down, and I think that helps with maybe pressure canning, which is not what we did. But I did that, and then when it was time to put them in their water bath, and I flipped them over, the seal popped like it had sealed. I still boiled them, of course. But anyway, so next what you do, once your water bath is at a rolling boil, you'll put all your jars that'll fit in, and you'll submerge it. You need to make sure you've got at least enough boiling water that you've got an inch or so of water above your jars. It's important that the whole thing is submerged, because that's how the canning process works. And again, like I said, I'm a beginner, so I'm guessing on how technical. I'm careful of how technical I'm speaking. But you want to leave them in the hot water bath for about 30 minutes. Now, if you don't have hot jars, and you also want to make sure your lids and jars are sterilized before you do any of this. If your jars aren't warm when you put everything in and you put it in the hot water bath, if you put a whole bunch of cold jars down in a hot boiling water bath, that water's going to stop boiling. So if that happens, that's fine, and I've read this. You can actually bring leave them submerged, and then once that water bath comes to a rolling boil, that's when you start your time. It's not going to hurt them to be in there a little bit longer, but you want to make sure they're in a hot water bath for 30 minutes. There are things that the brine mixture and the heat of the boiling water do to help remove dangerous toxins that can come out of the vegetables when we're preparing them for storage, long-term storage. So anyways, you pull them out, and you will take them out of the water. Now I made this, this mixture calls for, this boiled mixture is supposed to work for about 16 cups of snapped green beans. I ended up with about 7 quart jars and 8 pint jars. And I did smaller jars because some days I need a lot, and sometimes I need just enough for me and my husband, because my kids don't always eat them. And by don't always, they never eat them. So, smaller dinners, bigger dinners, you get it. So I had to do it in a couple batches so that it took a few hours because the water had to keep reheating as I would add more cold jars. But anyways, I feel like they turned out pretty good. They started off way brighter, greener, and this is what I've always seen canned green beans look like. About the same shade of green. It kind of adds a little bit of, they get a little darker, a little browner. I don't know if you'd call that browner. But I feel like they look good. I'm excited about it. Yeah, I was pumped when they came out like this. But anyways, if your seals, you don't want to press your button down. If it's so tempting to want to, ooh, are they sealed? Are they sealed? But you'll be able to see if they're down, as opposed to if they're still popped. You want them to pop on their own. And I think it was an hour and a half after I ended up laying down. So I finished these around midnight and I went straight to bed. And I think an hour later I was still hearing them pop where they were sealing. And that's true even with jellies or anything else I've tried to can, which is just jelly. So, anyways, it's super easy. I am excited to taste them. What I've read with this recipe is that it can be served in this liquid as long as you heat it enough, you know, maybe almost to a simmer, a light rolling boil. Or you can drain them, rinse them, and then heat them up, you know, with butter, water, fresh water, whatever you want to do. But the mixture, the brine will not hurt you. It's not toxic or anything. It shouldn't make you sick. So yeah, that's the beginner's guide to canning your own green beans. Who'd have thought I could do it? So yeah, maybe I'll do one for jelly, if anybody cares. I might just be doing this all for nothing. But anyway, all right, well, good luck, and I hope that this has been a help, and, all right. If you end up, if you end up doing your own, maybe you can post some pictures, or if you have other easy things to do, because I would love to be able to do all my vegetables in a water bath. Pressure canning kind of freaks me out. It's probably way more intimidating than it actually is, but there is there's added dangers with pressure canning. Not that it's not safe if you do it appropriately and you follow the instructions, but water bathing is just my comfort zone right now as a beginner. So, all right, well, thanks for watching.